Welcome to my Tailwind CSS crash course. This crash course is part of a larger playlist where I teach web development for beginners. I'm Norbert and this is Tailwind CSS. What is Tailwind CSS? Which is actually a utility-first CSS framework. Not like Bootstrap. Bootstrap mostly works with components. So basically, instead of writing custom CSS, you see predefined classes to build your own UI quickly. So why use Tailwind CSS? It has a fast UI, it's extremely fast to build UIs, it's responsive by default, no need to name CSS classes, and it's easy to customize with the configure file. So in this crash course, you'll learn how to create a modern and responsive card using Tailwind CSS, because we are going to create this. I'm going to treat this crash course as a project. If you've been following me, you know I like hands-on examples, hands-on teaching. So we're going to create this card using explicitly Tailwind CSS, and we're going to use Tailwind CSS version 4.1, which is recently been released. In this tutorial, you will learn how to create a modern and responsive profile card using Tailwind CSS. This card will include a profile picture, a name, job title, description, and interactive buttons, as you can see down here. Additionally, we'll implement a dark mode, which will be toggleable to enhance our user experience. So a short presentation would be that this project is Tailwind CSS utility classes first, completely responsive. As you can see here, we're going to utilize Flexbox and dark mode, of course, and a couple of custom styles, for example, the colors. We're also going to use the CDN. We're not going to use the CLI. It's going to include just some vanilla HTML and JavaScript. Basically, we're going to use only one command line of JavaScript, so don't worry about that. And what you will basically learn is how to utilize Flexbox in Tailwind CSS, utilize classes for spacing, colors, borders, text, and so on. So I also utilize MDs and LGs for larger and medium-sized screens. Already mentioned the dark mode class and simple interactivity with a little bit of JavaScript. So just a simple project, a simple crash course. But if you want more Tailwind CSS, I just released my course, my complete course on Tailwind CSS, over 8 hours of video content. Day one, link is down in the video description with the best price possible. Course is now also included in my complete bundle for the ultimate CSS frameworks course, where you have from beginner to advanced HTML, CSS, and CSS responsive design, complete Bootstrap course, a bonus Visual Studio Code course, and of course, the master Tailwind CSS course that was just released. So check it out. Link is down in the video description. With this being said, let's jump into the project, because that's what you're here. So I'm going to use my folder where I'm creating everything for the Learn Web Development for Complete Beginners. You can just create a new folder. But I have here my HTML crash course, my CSS crash course, and the projects that we already did if you were following this specific playlist. If not, then just create a new folder. I'm using Visual Studio Code, by the way. So a new folder, I'm going to call this Tailwind CSS crash course. We're just going to create a index.html file, create a doc type, hold down Shift, exclamation mark, not going to give it any specific title. And now let's open up Tailwind CSS. So basically, you're going to open up the Explore tab and just type in Tailwind CSS, which will then lead you to their starting page. Currently, they're on version 4.1. Finally, they were on version 4.0 until now. I didn't like that version, but I have now upgraded and it's less buggy. It actually works pretty well. This is why I'm going to do in just a couple of days a comparison between old Tailwind CSS, so Tailwind CSS version 3, the last one was 3.4.17, and the new 4.1. There are a couple of differences, not that many, but let's get started. So just click on this Get Started button. This should leave you. Also, by the way, the entire code is down in the description below. You're going to find the GitHub link where you can just copy and paste the code. So we're going to go from here to plain CDN. And all you need to do is just copy this script tag right here. As you can see here, just include it. Or you know what? I'm going to copy the entire doc tag. Just copy the script tag and include it here above your title. Now right click, open with live server, or just open it up with whatever you're serving your websites. I'm going to drag it to the right side here, make it smaller, make my code editor also smaller. So we can't see anything, but we're going to start out with an H2, and we're just going to type in, you're going to type in your own name. I would type in John Doe. So we're going to start off with the name here. Now, in order to use this, let's test it if we have Tailwind CSS installed. I already know it because the font style just changed. If I would comment out the script tag, then we'll get this font style. Also, you see here margins and padding automatically being applied by default, but Tailwind CSS will just zero them out, taking out all the margin, all the paddings, and we need to add them on our own. So let's go ahead and increase the text style. And the way you do this, so what we're trying to do is increase the font size. But Tailwind CSS had a different approach to this. As I said, it's class-based, utility first. We're going to type in the class, and here, in order for us to increase the font size, we're going to use the text, and for example, 2XL, so 2 times extra large. It's going to increase the text for us. Now, if I want to make it bold, we're going to just type in font, and for example, semi-bold is one of the options. And if I want to have some margin, for example, from the top, I'm just going to go with the MT, so margin top, and 4. Now, in order to change the color of the text, we again need to target the text and say that the color of gray and let's say 800, which is the intensity, will be applied. Now, if you want to see all the color palettes, you could basically go to Tailwind CSS and check them out on your own. What I did in the course, explicitly, we created our own little project using React where we have all the color palettes. And for example, if you want to check out gray, just type in a G, gray and 800, this will be this color palette. Now, if you would click on them, you could just copy the code from it. But you could also see in gray what will specific things look like. For example, a button, a primary button, secondary button, outline button, alerts, cards, and so forth and so on. So if you change these colors, you could automatically see them how they would look in different color palette and also in dark mode. Now we landed on this gray, but what we want to do is to also add a background to this, to the entire card. So first of all, let's create a card that is going to host the image, the title, and so forth and so on. So I'm going to go up here and just create a simple div. So either you can type in div or just dot. This is going to start typing out the classes. And we're just going to add to this a background. Now the project, the finished project, as you can see, starts in dark mode, but we are going to use for initial styling the wight style. And I'm going to show you how you can, by default, start something in dark mode after we add dark mode, which is basically going to be at the end. So we're going to add to this a bg wight, and I'm going to hit enter, not extend using emmet. As you can see here, emmet abbreviation, the code, because I could add multiple classes. I'm just going to add a background wight to this. So now let's bring our h2 into this div, background wight. We can't see anything right now. So what we need to do is differentiate the background. Let's go to the body, and right here we're going to add class and bg. And let's use just a light gray. So gray, and the lightest gray is 100. So there's our background wight for John Doe, and the background of the entire page, which is the body, will be a gray 100. Now I want this to have a, like an application, just have a width or a height of 100% of the window. Now, Tailwind CSS took a different approach. For example, if I want to define a minimum height, I just type in min and -h, and then screen, which will be the entire screen. So I just blocked everything into one screen. Now I want to center that element, and the way I can do this is, so the div, the main div, I'm going to use flex, which is going to display something in a row direction. But now it's going to take up, as you can see, the element now only takes up the width of its own content. The own content is for now the John Doe H2 element. So now I want to center the item. So I'm going to use items and dash center. And next I'm going to use justify dash center, which is going to center. And I forgot to add here and. That's why it's not centering. Okay, that's here. So now we have the main container in the center of the page. Now I'm going to add to the content a padding, so everything that is in the body should have a padding of 4. And now let's move to our main div again, so our main container, our card here. Let's trim down the edges by using rounded. So basically where you would use border radius, we're going to use, Tailwind CSS uses rounded, and then how hard it should trim it down. I'm going to use 2XL, as you can see how large the radius is. And to zoom in just a tinch, 150% should be enough. Now, if you want to add shadows, for example, to elements, you could use, I'm going to close up the explore tag here. You can use just the keyword shadow, the class of shadow, and the intensity will be then defined by using MD, XL, SM, so forth and so on. Now let's add some padding. I'm going to add 6 padding, and when I'm defining here P, it's just padding all around. If I want to define it in different axes or size, you would use Y, X axis, and so forth and so on. I'm getting into more details about this, obviously, in the course. Now, if you want, for example, to use a maximum width for an element, you could just use a max and width, and let's say we're going to max width this for an SM screen. Also, this should take up the full width of its container, of the parent container, which is the body. So we're going to use width and full. And everything that we type in here, as you can see in the finished project, is centered. So what we could do is use text center, which will center all future text as long as it is in this div container. Now, next, let's move to our image. So above our H2, as you can see in the finished project, we have a little image here. So first, we're going to use an image tag, and the source will be https column / i.pravatar, so pravatar.cc /150 img and is equal 12. We're going to get this image. And now let's style the image a bit using classes. So what we want to achieve is to have a width and a height for the image. Now we could use a width of 24, make it 24 in width, and a height of 24. Now you could also combine these two together and use size, and it's going to have the same result. Change this to 28, for example. Going to increase the width and the height of the image. Let's just leave it at 24. Now, as you can see in the finished project, we have here border, blue border, and we also have, and also the border is rounded. So we already used rounded here to round out these borders. Now we could use rounded, and we want to have a complete circle, then we would use full. It's going to make a full circle out of a square image. Remember, you have to have a square element. Now, because this is not a text element and we want to center it, we're going to use margin on the x-axis and type them in as auto. This is center. Add equal margins to the left and right. Just remember it as this way. Basically, it's going to center the element. Now, let's add a border to it by using the keyword border or the class border. And we could also define the intensity. So I'm going to add a border of 4. Now, this makes the image smaller because it takes up the entire width and adds 4 pixels to it, and then makes the content smaller. Now, if you want to color the border, you can use the border class, then the color, for example, blue, and then the intensity of 500. So this is going to make our color blue, or border color blue. Okay, next we need to add here a job description. So we're going to go underneath the H2 and create a paragraph tag. Just type in here, front end developer. Now let's add some style to it using classes. So class, and let's create again a text of gray, but this time I'm going to go with 600. I'm going to make the text smaller using text SM, add some margin to the top of the text in order to push it down a bit of 2. Now I'm going to copy this, paste it one more time. And actually, you know what? We're going to make the above one larger. And underneath, we're going to add some description. So, and here we're going to have the text of creating modern UIs and delightful user experiences. You know what? I'm going to have a little coffee break here. Delicious coffee. Love my coffee. Also, always have something to drink. Coffee is not for hydration, but it keeps the mind going. Okay, now after our description, so we have a job title or description, we need to create a couple of buttons. Now in Bootstrap CSS, you would just use the btn class. It's kind of predefined. But what Tailwind CSS does is adds more flexibility, more possibilities in order for us to create our buttons. So first of all, I'm going to create a container for these 2 buttons in order to display them then one after another. So let's create here a div with a class of margin top of 4. And I'm going to just add classes now to it. So dot once more, then flex, so display them as Flexbox, then justify the content to the center and add a gap of 4 to them. Gap 4. And there should be a dot. Okay, so everything that I'm going to type in, hey, gap 4, go back inside of here. So everything that I'm going to type in here, for example, let's create, now I'm not going to create buttons. I'm going to create anchor tags. You also use anchor tags for buttons. And I'm going to create anchor tags in order for me to show you that you can change elements. So if I'm going to create this anchor tag with follow like this, and just show you that For example, in Tailwind CSS, anchor tags are automatically unstyled. You see this anchor tag, usually it's blue, it's underlined, it has a little bit of hover effect on it. And if you click on it, it does refresh the page. So I'm going to just add here a star, which is going to stop that. Basically going to send us to the current page. But I just want to illustrate that you can change the style of anchor tags using Tailwind CSS. So let's add here class of padding on the x-axis of 4, padding on the y-axis of 2. I usually use a divided by 2 method to add left and right more padding than top and bottom, or a multiple of 2. Now let me also add a background color to this to see something. So we're just going to go with we're going to go with our BG blue and 600. There we go. There's a beautiful button or future button. Now you can also add hover effects. For example, if I want to hover over a button and change the color, I'm going to use a BG. First of all, you're going to use the keyword of hover as a class, then column, and then just tell it what it should do when you hover over it. For example, I want this to change the color. So the BG, the background color, to blue, and let's say 800. Now if I hover over the button, color changes. But what I don't like is this extremely quick changing effect. So I'm just going to add here the class of transition, and this will kind of take care of on its own. Now you could also add transition-all, which will affect each and every transition that you will add to this. You could also add only transition color, transition background, and so on and so on. So what we're going to transition. I'm not going to go too deep into transition because you can manipulate the speed of the transition, the type of the transition, going to transition in and out, and so on and so on. We're not going to go too deep into transitions or animations. Check out the course if you want more input on effects. Now, what I also don't like is that the color is kind of mashed into the background color, so the text color. So we're going to change the text color to text and white. There we go. Now let's also round out the borders, and instead of using a dimension for the borders, if you just type in rounded, this is automatically going to round to a custom size, a predefined size of the border radius. So we're done with our first button. Now let's get the second one. And the second one is a bit different because it's an outline button. So in order to create an outline button, first of all, I'm going to copy the first one because we are going to reuse a couple of things here. So this is going to be the text of message. Now we obviously don't have a background color for an outline button. So what I'm going to use here is a BG and transparent. Now we can't see our text anymore. So let's change the text from white to gray and 700. Now we still have the dark hover effect on our dark blue. So I'm going to change the background blue to gray and just 200. So basically, if we hover over it, we're going to have that gray effect, just as we have in the finished project. Now we also need we also need to see the border and the color of the border. So once again, we're going to use our border property here. And if I don't add anything, so any value to it, it's just going to add a 1 border. Now, if you want to change the color, we all know how to do this. So I'm going to change border and gray and 300. And there we go. We have our outline button with the hover effect. Now there's one last button that is missing, and that is to transform everything into dark mode. Now you would think that this is a link, but actually I'm going to use a button. Now we're going to step outside of this div, which is wrapping around those 2 buttons for follow and message. And we're going to just create here a button. We're going to type in the class of toggle and dark mode. And now let's style it a bit. So let's add a couple of classes. We're going to push down the button MT6 for margin from the top 6. Change the text color, text blue and 600. On hover, I'm going to add now effect of an underline. So basically, if I hover over the text, it's now going to have that underline effect. Now, we should signify that we're going to do something with this. So let's also add a cursor and pointer to it. So now we can signify that you can click on this button. Also want to make the text smaller. So once again, text and SM. And there we go. We have everything that we need in order to implement dark mode. Now, the way dark mode works in Tailwind CSS, it basically just adds, or you need to add a class of dark to the HTML dark tag. So up here, I'm going to go to the HTML and add the class of dark. As soon as this class is active, we can use dark mode. So for example, if I go to the body tag and just add here a way to change, or the way this should behave when dark mode is active, then it will automatically change to that specification. Now, each time you want something to be different in dark mode, you need to add a class of dark. So just as you add hover, just as you add a hover effect, you just type in dark column, and then just type in what you want to change. And for us, we want to change the BG, the background, to a gray of 900. And voila, dark mode is not working. Now, one last thing you need to do, usually in order to enable dark mode, you still need to do something. Now, maybe it did work for you. And the reason for this is it's kind of operating system specific. Whether you're on Windows or Mac, if you're using a dark mode for your Mac or Windows, you will already see dark mode activated. Let me prove this to you. If you're on Windows, just open up color settings. And if I change the choice default app type to dark, you will see that my website automatically changed to dark. If I change it back to light, you're going to see the change back to light. So yes, dark mode is now working. Now, in order to activate it by the user, we need to add a windows.config or actually a tailwind.config file, but we're not using a CLI, so we need to implement it right within here. And the way we can do that is create a little script tag. So we're going to go above the title, type in script. We're not going to use JavaScript. What we are going to do is just go into the script and tell it, first of all, that this should be not a script tag, but it's a style tag. So style, it was a script tag in version 3, but in version 4, it's a style tag. So in the style tag, all we need to do is first of all specify that the style tag is of the type of text and / it's not a CSS file, but it's a Tailwind CSS. Then in here, we're going to use @rules. So first, I'm going to show you the dark mode, and then we're going to go to changing themes. So first, I'm going to use here custom style, actually not the custom style, custom variant. And we're going to call this dark. So we specify the custom variant of dark and ampersand, where open close parenthesis, the class of dark, comma, dark, and space star, not counter, custom. And voila, dark mode is now working for your project. And it's also going to work for each and every one that is going to use your project, regardless of if they have dark mode activated on their operating system or not. Now let's trigger dark mode by this button. Let's go to the button, and all we actually want to do is toggle this class on and off, because if I remove dark from here, hit save, you're going to see it not working anymore. So what we're going to do is when we click this button, we're going to add and remove that class. So the way we can do this, go to the button and add here a little function. We're going to go ahead, add an on-click event, and we're going to select the document. From here, the document element, and we're going to trigger its class list by adding the toggle property to it. And we're going to toggle the function of dark. And there should be single quotes, dark. So if I click now on this little fellow, it's going to remove the class of dark. You cannot see it here, but if I open, let's open up the website, right click, inspect, and yeah, you can actually see the class over. So take a look at this HTML class. As soon as I click this button, it's going to add back dark mode. Okay, if I click it once more, it's going to remove dark mode. So that's what we did using that little snippet of code there. Now let's add dark mode throughout the entire page, because in our finished project, as you can see, in dark mode, the background is dark. The text here also changes to white. And so let's do this. So we already added the class of dark here in our body tag. Now let's go to the div and let's add, I'm going to add it now after this BG white. We're going to add BG, actually, first of all, dark, then BG and gray. This was 900, the body. We are going to add a little less, so 800. So let's trigger it, dark, and there we go. Now, because we have dark mode activated, it is automatically being triggered. If I want to deactivate it, I have to click on toggle dark. Okay. Now we can't see our text anymore, our title, the name. So we're going to go to the name and just change the text. We have the text. Text here is gray, but in dark mode. And tip from me, always add the dark mode effect right to right near to the specific class you're changing. So dark and text, it should be white. Okay. Next, we need the second text. So the description, which is here, and we're just going to go in here, dark, text, and gray, and 300. And the last one will be text, and here, dark in the description. We're going to change here the text, gray, and 500. Okay. Now, down here in the button, change a couple of things. For example, we change the border color. when we're in dark mode, we want to have a little bit darker border. So right down here where we have a border gray 300, but in dark, we're going to have a border gray and 600. Okay. And now, how about if I want to have a different hover effect in dark mode? How do you think we can do that? Well, we're going to target first of all dark and now hover. And now we're going to just add what we want to change. And in our case, we just want to change the background to gray and dash 700. Okay. Let's also add a transition. We already have a transition to it. Let's also change the text. So text gray and here dark, text gray and 200. And there we go. So we're almost done. One last thing, please hit like and subscribe if you liked the video. Also click that notification bell. But before we go to that, let's also add a couple of custom classes. The way we do this in version 4, it's creating another at rule. I'm going to call this theme. And basically it works exactly like CSS variables. So --, color, want to add a color to the theme. And now the name of that color or the name of the variable, we're going to call it primary. And let's just add a hexadecimal number of 2B7FFF, which is going to be a blue color. So when we want to use something like this, we're just going to go ahead and replace, for example, here, border blue 500. I'm just going to replace it with primary. Hit save, and you see the changes. Nothing. But if I would change this to, let's see, a red color. So let's go ahead, inspect. I'm going to go click on this little variable and let's change this to red. Okay, I'm just going to copy this hexadecimal number, close this up. If you refresh this, it's going to work again. And I'm going to replace it here with this. I'm going to see the border being red now. So if I want to change something else, for example, the button, I can go ahead and where's the first one? BG blue here and BG primary. We're going to have a red button. But on our hover, it's still going to be a blue button. Also, if you want to change that, just create another color, so on and so on. So hope you enjoyed this crash course. If you did, definitely give it a thumbs up. Like and subscribe as always, and click that notification bell. Also, if you want to learn more about Tailwind CSS, as I said, my freshly released course is out now. I added a coupon code just for you guys down in the video description. Definitely check that one out if you want to have the entire bundle with Sass included, with HTML, CSS, Bootstrap, Tailwind CSS, and a short but consistent, concise Visual Studio Code course added as a bonus in there. Then check out the bundle. With this being said, I'm Norbert PM. I teach web development. Happy coding. Catch you next time. Bye-bye.